My name is Renee Nelson. I'm 32. It began with a two-line text that felt like a temperature reading for the house. Terse, clinical, and demanding. No hello, no please. I need a new car. Can you cosign? From my sister Hannah. I laughed out loud at my desk, the sound too small in the tiny office I rent above the building. The coffee beside me had gone cold. It was a boring Thursday otherwise. Invoices, a freight dispute I was supposed to settle by lunchtime, the kind of small fights that tease a grown-up soul awake. But the vibration on my phone carried something else, the small, steady thrum of a storm forming. For context, and I say this without flourish because it was simply fact, I work in logistics, I own my townhouse, I pay my bills on time, I keep receipts, I do the adult things other people say they admire when they want to look like they're being practical. My sister Hannah is 28, flickers in and out of jobs like bad Wi-Fi, and burns through money the way some people burn through candles, fast, dramatic, and always leaving a mess. She cries well in public, and that was her superpower in our parents' house. She was the hurting one, and because she performed hurt better than anyone, everyone folded. So I typed back because I couldn't help it. Dream on. I expected begging, or the usual run to my parents where rhetorical tears were produced on demand and logic quietly evaporated. I did not expect the next message to look like it had been typed while someone screamed into the phone. Don't you dare. Refuse, and you're cut off from family events. The caps made the words thud. My hand paused over the keyboard. For most people, that message would sting. For me, it detonated something that had been quietly simmering for years. There are moments when a person realizes they've been living to prop someone else up, the long, bureaucracy-filled kind of propping, where gratitude is a rumor and obligation is the current. I had been that prop, the steady one, the quiet check writer, the sister they could always point to when a crisis needed stabilizing. But every prop collapses when it's been forced to carry too much weight. That morning, I filled my mug and walked to the kitchen, the sunlight on the counter looking suspiciously like the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I called the bank. There was a credit line tied to the family account, something I had, reluctantly, agreed to during a Thanksgiving when I was made to feel like the only responsible adult left. I'd been guilted into it between 2 plates of cranberry sauce and a sermon about how family helps family. I'd signed the form because shame is a heavier currency than refusal when your mother is in the room and your father is watching you like you might ruin the holiday. You can shut it down immediately if you want, the bank rep said, like it was no consequence at all. The reprieve of bureaucracy was strangely exhilarating. I signed. I confirmed. I asked them to send the termination notice to my email. The act felt small and immense at the same time, closing a line of credit like slamming a window against a draft. It was symbolic and technical and coldly final. By the time the sun reached my living room window the next morning, there were 36 missed calls waiting for me. 12 from Hannah, 9 from my dad, 8 from my mom. The rest from cousins and one aunt who apparently called because someone told her the house had caught fire. I stared at the list and let it ring out. There's a clarity to silence that sometimes tastes like victory, but mostly like anticipation. They assumed I'd cave. They assumed I'd negotiate. They were wrong. My boyfriend Ethan, a quiet, relentless kind of man who fixes things with screwdrivers and sense, noticed the way I'd gone stone quiet and asked, worry creasing his brows. He texted me at lunch. Are you okay? You sound windless. I'm fine, I lied, because I'm about to do something that might burn my family. Sounds theatrical, and less like the truth that had nested in my chest for years. I'm tired of being everyone's financial and emotional umbrella. Ethan came by that evening to help me file some paperwork I had to sign. He poured whiskey into a glass and then poured most of it into the sink when he realized I wasn't going to drink. He doesn't perform grand gestures. He folds shirts the way he folds problems, carefully, slowly. You're not alone in this, he said. He was right in a simple human way. He also offered practical things. Change the shared passwords. Check for any auto-pay linked to you. When the world was loud, his voice was a door you could step through for a minute. But of course, this was never only about money. A set of scenes snapped into flashback the moment my thumbs hit the final send on the bank closure. Hannah, face blown out with fury, throwing her drink. The silver of scissors reflecting overhead light. the clip-clip of metal and the sound that lingers when hair meets blade. That night still moves through my body like a broken record. The hush afterward, the accusing looks, my mother's shocked wail, my father's quiet cold. They made me the villain for defending myself. That memory was a fossil embedded beneath newer wounds. I'd been protective, and I'd been practical. I'd let Hannah use my older Camry when she was unemployed. I did it because my parents were strapped, and I believed, stupidly, that lending help was the same as loving. The car sat in front of their house for months like a public proof of my charity. She wrecked it texting behind the wheel. She said it was the brakes. I said no. I paid for insurance, for maintenance, for gas, the quiet, invisible ledger of my patience. So the next move was as quiet as the bank call had been loud. I never transferred the title. I had never turned over the last thing that truly tied me to that supposed loan. It was my failsafe. I signed the towing request on my phone and watched, one of those small cinematic moments where everything slows, as a truck rolled away with the blue Camry vanishing down the street. I took a picture of the empty driveway and sent it to Hannah. It's back in my garage. She called 12 times that afternoon. Then voicemail, then texts that begged and screamed and threatened. Ethan watched the string of messages with the odd, detached expression of someone seeing a storm from behind glass. "She'll go to Mom," he said. Not a guess, just a statement. She did. The family group chat melted into an argument where I could watch my name get tried and found wanting. My mother wrote, "Renee, we need to talk ASAP." The guilt they tried to vacuum over me with that phrase, "we need to talk," was a powerful currency. I left the group chat, not with a speech, not with drama, just by tapping exit and watching it vanish. The silence afterward wasn't friendly. It was a held breath. And in that held breath was something new, the awareness that when people threaten exile to control you, they are testing whether you will let them. For years, I had let them. On that April afternoon, with the late sun streaming in and a neighbor's lawnmower humming, I realized I wouldn't. That night, I sat in my kitchen with the city lights in the window and the coffee gone bitter in the pot. The silence in the house was full of possibility. Ethan placed his palm over mine, steady, warm. "You did the right thing," he said. Maybe he was biased. Maybe he saw clearly because he wasn't my family. But when someone you love says you did the right thing, after a lifetime of being told you were wrong, it matters. Not because it absolves you of consequence, but because it makes standing up something human, not revenge, not performance. Outside, my phone vibrated with one last message that crawled under the porch light and made my skin prickle. "You'll regret this." I checked the security camera on my phone, watched the grainy black and white footage of my driveway loop, and found nothing. No slashed tires, no figures with masks, just the quiet street and a trash truck rounding the corner. For the first time in a very long time, when I lay down that night, I didn't dream about being small. I dreamed about doors and locks, about paper signed and snapped shut. I dreamed of the Camry in my garage, hood cooled like a promise. This was the beginning, not of victory, not yet, only of an escalation I had long intended but never articulated. There's a particular kind of grief when you realize the people who raised you will choose a story because it's more comfortable than the truth. There's also a sharp, bright kind of relief when you decide you're done being the main line of credit for other people's chaos. I set my phone to Do Not Disturb, though I left the camera running. Ethan curled up beside me and read for a while, the lamp painting his face soft and ordinary. For a moment, I let myself believe in ordinary things, the sound of pages turning, the tiny electric hum of the refrigerator, the small steady anchor of a man who didn't need my bank account to love me. Outside, under the street lamp, the house lights of my parents' place burned late. Inside me, behind the lock of my breastbone, something clicked into place. If this was to be war, it would be a war of boundaries. If it was to be a fire, then I would decide when to throw the first match. By sunrise, the group chat had transformed into a battleground I no longer wanted to fight in. The message previews alone told me everything. My mother's guilt-ridden "Renee, you've really hurt your sister." My father's colder, clipped, "You went too far this time." Then the inevitable chorus from extended family members who had no idea what was really happening but loved an audience. I muted the chat, stared at my reflection in the microwave door, and thought, This was never about a car. It never had been. It was about control, about how long they could keep pulling the same strings before I cut them. I'd spent years playing the family's safety net, the fixer, the accountant of everyone's mistakes. When my mom's credit card was maxed because Hannah borrowed it for an emergency, I paid it down. When my dad's name got attached to a loan Hannah defaulted on, I made the calls to get his credit cleaned. I carried their chaos like a full backpack on a hike I never agreed to take. That's the thing about being the responsible one. People confuse your silence for consent. By mid-morning, the calls shifted from pleading to furious. I ignored everyone. Ethan left early for work, kissed my forehead, and said quietly, "Let them show you who they are." Then he was gone, leaving the quiet hum of the fridge and my own pulse thudding in my ears. An hour later, I was on the phone again. This time, not with the bank, with the towing company. Because there was one last string connecting me to that family mess. The Camry. The car I had given Hannah out of guilt and stupidity, and hope that maybe if I helped her get on her feet, she'd stop dragging me into the mud with her. The car she'd wrecked once, whined about fixing, and then left parked in my parents' driveway as a monument to entitlement. What Hannah never knew, or maybe what she forgot, was that I never transferred the title. That car was still legally mine. So I signed the pickup form and told them exactly where it was. At 2:17 p.m., I got the photo confirmation. A silver tow truck hauling away a blue sedan, the same blue I'd picked 3 years ago because Hannah said it made her feel expensive. I stared at that photo for a long moment, then sent it to her with one short line, "It's back in my garage." The phone rang within seconds. Her name flashing like an alarm bell, Hannah calling. I didn't answer. Then came the flood. 12 missed calls, 3 voice notes full of shrieking accusations, and one long text that said, "You're destroying this family. You're jealous. You've always been jealous." Jealous. That was her favorite word. Her shield and sword rolled into one. The label she used to keep everyone from seeing the truth. That I wasn't jealous of her chaos, I was exhausted by it. By the time the sun went down, my cousin Jake texted me from his work number. He never used his personal phone for family politics anymore. "She's losing it," he wrote. "Your mom's crying, your dad's pacing, Hannah's throwing stuff. I told them you did what you had to." That was Jake, the only one who saw through Hannah's theatrics. The one who'd been at that Christmas dinner years ago when everything broke for good. And maybe that's why, that night, my mind replayed that dinner like an old home movie. Flashback. Christmas, 3 years earlier. My parents had begged me to come after I said I had plans with Ethan's family. Just a short visit, Mom had pleaded, for Hannah's sake. When I arrived, Hannah was already tipsy, a glass of red wine swaying in her hand, laughter too loud, eyes a little too sharp. The house smelled like cinnamon and resentment. Halfway through dessert, she started in on me. "You never support me, Renee. You think you're better than us because you have a job, because you—" I remember setting down my fork, feeling something twist in my stomach. "Hannah, please don't do this." "Oh, don't do this? You mean don't tell the truth?" She laughed, took another sip, then tossed the rest of her wine directly at me. The liquid hit my face, my hair, my sweater. The entire table froze. My mother gasped. My father whispered my name like a warning, and I stood up, not shouting, not crying, just walking into the kitchen, picking up the first pair of scissors I saw on the counter and coming back to where Hannah sat smirking. I reached down and, before anyone could move, cut 6 inches of her hair right off. The sound, snip, was so loud it silenced the entire room. Her scream broke the air. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's voice shook. "Renee, what are you doing?" And me? I was breathing, finally breathing. They kicked me out that night, told me I'd gone too far. Not a word about the wine, the humiliation, the years of taking her abuse and calling it forgiveness. That was the night I stopped pretending peace was possible. End of flashback. I blinked, back in the present. The glow of my phone reflected off the window. Hannah's latest message had just arrived. "You'll regret this." The same words she'd sent once before, the night after I cut her hair. Ethan called me just then, his voice calm but firm. "You changed the locks yet?" "Not yet," I admitted, "but I will." "Good, because people like her, they don't stop until they run out of doors to walk through." He was right, and that realization carried me straight into the next day. The following morning, I walked into a locksmith shop and said, "Every lock, change them all." By the afternoon, every key that had ever opened my front door was useless, and for the first time in years, my home felt like mine. But peace in my family never lasted. When my phone pinged again that evening, it wasn't Hannah. It was my mom, her voice trembling through the voicemail. "Renee, your sister's having a breakdown. Please be the bigger person." I listened to it once, then again, then deleted it. Because that sentence, "be the bigger person," had always been code for take the blame. And I was done paying interest on other people's irresponsibility. Still, something gnawed at me that night, a sense that the silence ahead wasn't safety. It was strategy. Hannah didn't know how to sit still. She didn't know how to lose quietly. I sat on the couch, the room dim except for the blue light of my phone, and whispered to myself, "She's planning something." And I was right. Because 2 days later, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. No stamp. My name, handwritten across the front. The handwriting was too neat to be Hannah's. I opened it slowly, already bracing for the next battle. The letter inside wasn't a threat. It was worse, calculated. A confession that wasn't meant for me. It was Hannah's handwriting, but the letter itself had been to my parents. At the bottom, in smaller, tighter script, were words I instantly recognized. My cousin Jake's handwriting. "You didn't get this from me. I'm tired of watching you take the fall." I sat down right there on the kitchen floor, knees cold against the tile, and started reading. "Mom, Dad, don't worry. Renee always caves. She acts tough, but she's desperate to be liked. All I have to do is wait her out. Once she feels guilty, she'll hand over what I need. It's just who she is." Every word sank like a stone. The letter went on about how she'd played me to get the Camry, how she'd manipulated Mom into guilt-tripping me, how she planned to stage another meltdown if things didn't go her way. It wasn't rage I felt. It was recognition. The kind of eerie calm that comes when the storm you always suspected finally breaks, and the lightning reveals the landscape exactly as you thought it was. I folded the letter once, twice, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in a kitchen drawer with my spare batteries and receipts. Not to hide it, but to keep it like evidence. Then I turned off my phone. For the first time in weeks, the silence wasn't hollow. It was heavy, deliberate. But Hannah wasn't done. She never was. Within days, the rumors started. Jake texted again. "She's saying you emotionally abused her. Says you cut her off because you're controlling. She's painting herself as the victim again." I shouldn't have been surprised. I'd seen this tactic before. When the tantrums failed, she turned to stories. In her new version, I was the cold sister who never cared. She was the black sheep, the misunderstood dreamer, always trying to make me proud. The performance had an audience too. Family friends, church people, distant relatives who loved gossip disguised as concern. But this time, her script wasn't landing. Some relatives began reaching out to me quietly. Uncle Dennis called from his garage, whispering like he was smuggling state secrets. "She's gotten worse, Renee. Your dad tried to talk about the car, and she burst into tears before he even finished the sentence. You did what you had to." He wasn't the only one. Aunt Valerie messaged me after Hannah's latest outburst at a birthday party I wasn't invited to. I finally told her she's too old to be blaming everyone else. She stormed out. The family was cracking down the middle, and somehow I didn't feel vindicated. I felt sad. Because all of this, the noise, the drama, the manipulation, was built on a house of love I once believed in. That night, Ethan found me sitting on the edge of the bed, the letter still in my hands. "You're not going to use it, are you?" he asked softly. "Not yet," I said. "But one day they're going to hear her words, not mine." He nodded. "Then make sure it's on your terms." It was that idea, that timing mattered, that pushed me toward my next move. I'd reclaimed the car, cut the credit line, changed the locks, but the Camry itself still sat in my garage, a ghost of obligation, a reminder. So I called a contact from work, someone who occasionally dealt with auctioning off fleet vehicles. Within 48 hours, the Camry was gone. Cash sale, clean. Before it left, I took one last photo, the car being winched onto a truck under the gray sky. Then I texted it to Hannah. "Sold. Don't worry, you won't have to be embarrassed by my car anymore." No reply, just silence. 3 days later, Jake sent a screenshot from Hannah's Instagram story. A filtered photo of her at the beach, tossing her freshly cut hair in the wind. Caption: "It always grows back stronger, just like me." I stared at it and almost laughed. The hair, the same symbol she'd used to turn me into the villain. She was trying to rewrite the story again, frame herself as the triumphant survivor, But her post wasn't the only thing circulating that week. Rumors reached me through cousins, then coworkers, that I'd stolen Hannah's car, that I'd ruined her life. I didn't chase the narrative. Not this time. I let it breathe. I let it grow. Because I knew what she didn't. Sometimes the best revenge isn't disproving a lie. It's letting people see the truth unfold without your help. But the quiet didn't last. At 11:53 p.m. one night, the security camera on my phone pinged. Motion detected. Front door. The footage showed someone creeping up the porch. Tall. Older. My stomach dropped. It wasn't Hannah. It was my father. He bent down, lifted the fake rock beside the porch steps, the one where I'd kept a spare key, and pocketed it. I watched the video 3 times before I could move. By morning, I'd installed a new alarm system, updated the codes, and replaced the smart locks. Again. And this time, I didn't just plan for defense. I planned for exposure. Because that barbecue was coming up, the annual family event at Uncle Rick's, and I knew Hannah would be there. I also knew exactly what I was going to do. When Uncle Rick called to remind me I wasn't technically invited, his tone held pity. "Renee, your dad said it might be better if you skipped this one. No drama, you know." I smiled into the phone. "No worries, I won't cause any." And I meant it. Because I wasn't coming for drama. I was coming for closure. The letter still sat folded in my drawer, but that night I made a copy. I recorded myself reading it, slow, steady, word for word, and transferred the audio onto a small Bluetooth speaker. It was time someone else heard the truth in Hannah's own handwriting. The air at Uncle Rick's backyard barbecue felt heavy, like humidity mixed with suspicion. Paper lanterns swayed in the breeze, and the smell of grilled corn mingled with the unspoken tension of too many relatives pretending nothing was wrong. I arrived late, deliberately. No invitation, no smile, no pretense. Just sunglasses, a polite nod, and a calmness that wasn't for show. Uncle Rick saw me first. His face twitched between surprise and reluctant respect. "Renee," he said slowly, "just no fireworks, okay?" "Not my style," I answered. But it was, in a way, just not the kind they expected. Hannah spotted me within minutes. Her eyes widened, then hardened. A flash of outrage before she turned away dramatically to whisper into Mom's ear. My mother's expression was the same blend of panic and guilt I'd seen since childhood, when she knew Hannah was wrong, but couldn't bear to admit it. My dad didn't look at me at all. That told me everything. The sun was dipping low when I quietly reached into my bag. The small black Bluetooth speaker was no bigger than my palm, the light blinking softly like a heartbeat. I waited until conversation hit its usual peak. Laughter, music, the clinking of plates. Before I paired it to my phone. The music cut mid-song, the yard hushed. Then my voice came through the speaker, low, even, unmistakably clear. "Mom, Dad, don't worry. Renee always caves. She acts tough, but she's desperate to be liked. All I have to do is wait her out." The sound carried over the lawn, steady and unflinching. Every sentence from Hannah's letter echoed through the yard like slow thunder. Children froze mid-step. Grown-ups stopped chewing. "She'll feel guilty. She always does. Once she does, she'll give me what I need. It's who she is." Gasps rippled across the tables. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Uncle Rick looked at Hannah, then at me. Jake, standing near the cooler, met my eyes and gave the smallest nod. Yes, this was right. When the audio ended, there was silence. Not the soft kind, the brittle kind that comes right before something cracks. My dad spoke first. "Renee, is that her handwriting, her words?" I said quietly. Hannah's face had gone white. She opened her mouth, maybe to lie, maybe to cry, but no sound came out. Then she bolted, heels digging into the lawn, pushing past the patio chairs and into the house. The screen door slammed behind her. My mother looked around, trembling, eyes wet. "Renee, you shouldn't have—" "Read the truth?" I cut in. "You asked me to be the bigger person. I am. I'm showing you what being small really looks like." My father's jaw tightened. He looked like he wanted to defend Hannah, to find some spin, some family-friendly rewrite. But this time, even he couldn't find a way. He turned, walked toward the house, and didn't come back out. Uncle Rick broke the silence with a slow exhale. "Well," he muttered, "guess the fireworks came early." Laughter, uncomfortable, uncertain, rippled from the edges of the yard. But Jake walked over and handed me a beer, his expression unreadable until he said quietly, "Wasn't expecting a speech." It wasn't, I said. It was a reminder. He clinked his bottle against mine, then considerate heard. I didn't stay long after that. As I walked toward my car, the evening light flickered across the hood, a reflection of fading gold and the faint tremor in my hands. It wasn't adrenaline, it was release. But peace never lasts long in my family. That night, around 1:17 a.m., the doorbell camera lit up my phone. A figure stood on the porch, half hidden in the shadows, holding a grocery bag. My pulse quickened. The camera light caught just enough. My dad. He didn't knock. He didn't call. He just stood there for a moment, looking around like he didn't recognize the house anymore, then slipped the bag down by the door and left. When I opened the door later, I found what he'd left behind. A note on top of a half-eaten cake from the barbecue. The note said only, "I don't want to be in the middle, but she's still your sister." I stared at those words for a long time before locking the door again. The next morning, I changed every code, every password, every lock, again. Then I sent one group text to the family chat I'd once abandoned. "No one is to enter my property. If you have a key, it's useless now. This is not a discussion." Jake replied instantly, "Finally." Uncle Dennis sent a single thumbs-up emoji, his first ever. My parents didn't reply, neither did Hannah. Only my grandmother texted back, shaky but sincere. "I don't understand everything, but I trust you." That one hit harder than I expected. By the next weekend, my world had gone quiet. No messages, no calls, no crisis disguised as family obligation. Just silence. The kind that was heavy, yes, but honest. Ethan found me sitting on the porch with coffee, the morning light soft across my face. "Looks like you won," he said. I shook my head. "No, I just stopped losing." He smiled, that small, knowing smile of his, and took my hand. Same thing sometimes. Behind us, the house stood still, new locks glinting in the sun. Inside, the framed letter rested in my drawer like a final page I no longer needed to read. But part of me knew, families like mine never end stories cleanly. They linger like echoes. And sure enough, a week later, a text arrived from an unknown number. "You think you won, but the story's not over." No name, but I didn't need one. Hannah's drama always needed a sequel. The text sat on my screen like a bruise that wouldn't fade. "You think you won, but the story's not over." For a second, I almost laughed. Because that was the problem with Hannah. She never understood the difference between winning and walking away. To her, everything was a competition. To me, it was a survival plan. I didn't reply. I didn't even block the number. I just muted it and set the phone face down on the counter. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my kitchen table, clean, warm, and startlingly quiet. No buzzing phone, no guilt-heavy voicemails, no family drama leaking into my life like a slow poison. Just me, my coffee, and the hum of peace that didn't demand an apology to exist. Ethan came in from the balcony, his hair still messy from sleep, holding my phone. "It's been blowing up," he said softly. "You want to see?" I shook my head. "No, if it's important, it'll find me another way." He nodded, placed the phone down, and sat opposite me. We didn't talk much. We didn't have to. He just reached across the table and squeezed my hand, the same way he had that night after the first text, when all this began. Only this time, I wasn't shaking. Days turned into weeks. No calls from Mom. No more midnight footsteps on the porch. Just the quiet hum of a life finally unentangled. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, Jake called. He never wasted words. "You should know, she finally bought a car. Old hatchback. Paid in cash." He paused. "She named it Karma." That one word, karma, made me smile. Not out of spite, but irony. Because that was the closest Hannah had ever come to self-awareness. "She'll spin it like she came out on top," I said. "She already did," Jake replied, chuckling softly. Posted a picture online. "Sometimes you lose the car, but find yourself." I laughed for real this time, the kind that doesn't hurt your chest. "Let her have the last word," I said. "I'm done writing chapters about her." That night, I opened the drawer where I'd kept the letter, the one that started the avalanche. I read the first line again, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel the distance. The words still stung, but in the way an old scar sometimes aches when it rains. Proof of healing, not a wound reopening. I tucked it back into the envelope and placed it at the bottom of my filing cabinet, between tax papers and the deed to my house. Evidence, yes, but also history. Later, as I stood by the window, the city stretched out beneath me. Lights blinking, distant cars humming, life moving on. I thought of how many times I'd wished for closure from people who'd only ever offered chaos. And I realized something. Closure isn't a gift they give you. It's a lock you install yourself. Ethan joined me, arms wrapping around my waist. "You okay?" he murmured. I smiled faintly. Better than okay, just free. We stood there in silence, watching headlights pass. It felt like the world had exhaled with me. My phone buzzed again that night. Unknown number. Another message. "You'll regret cutting us out. Family always finds its way back." But I didn't even open it. I just deleted the entire thread. Some stories don't need a reply. The next morning, I changed my number. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove out to the old lake where Ethan and I used to go when we first met. I parked, rolled the windows down, and let the wind rush in. No soundtrack, no narration, no fight left to have. In the reflection of the water, I didn't see the cold, ungrateful sister they used to describe. I saw someone who finally stopped explaining herself to people committed to misunderstanding her. Before I left, I whispered a quiet goodbye. Not to Hannah, not to my parents, but to the version of me who kept hoping they'd change. That version had done her best, and now she could rest. When I got home, the locks clicked softly behind me. I didn't double-check them this time. I didn't need to. Peace, I realized, doesn't always come with forgiveness. Sometimes it comes with silence, a new key, and a door that finally closes without guilt. Outside, the wind rattled the leaves against the window, like the faint sound of applause from the universe. Inside, I smiled, knowing that the story was finally, irrevocably mine.